Eldridge, Ian, Danny,
Morning.
Gary, and Braxton. George is somewhere here. Hi, George. Okay, so we start with public comments. Oh, right, yes, that's what we do. Oh, we have to have a, we have to say we're on a virtual meeting first, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm.
This meeting is being conducted virtually in compliance with City of Richmond Ordinance number 2020-093. The public notice, meeting agenda, and agenda attachments for this June 15th, 2021 standing meeting of the boards of GRTC, RideFinders, and Old Dominion Transit Management Company were posted on June 11th, 2021 at ridegrtc.com. For the meeting notice, all written comments received via email by Carrie Rose Pace prior to 5 p.m. on the day preceding a meeting were provided to all members of the board the night before the meeting and are read during the public comment period of the meeting by staff following the 2-minute speaking limit and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Also, for the meeting notice, this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. This meeting, I received one submitted comment in writing from Brian Montgomery. A note, this letter was submitted to GRTC Chief of Transit Tim Barham and Henrico County Assistant Director of Transportation and Development Todd Ure, and the customer requested this letter be shared with the GRTC Board of Directors. Good morning, Mr. Barham, Mr. Ure. When will the fare collection on GRTC buses and specialized transportation caravan start up again for customers to have to pay? I know it stopped when the COVID-19 pandemic started in March of 2019. Will it go back into effect as of July 1st, 2021, when both the new fiscal year, when the new fiscal year, start for the City of Richmond, GRTC, and Henrico County? Customers are grateful the transportation was able to continue through COVID-19, knowing the cost burden that has occurred because of it. Was the cost covered under some of the relief packages that came through from Congress? When fare collection, the start, will they cost, and forgive me, this is how it's typed, for customers go up any to cover they cost running through the pandemic for the buses and specialized transportation caravan? Please send a thank you to both Henrico County Board of Supervisors, Richmond City Council, and GRTC Board of Directors. Customers are grateful not to lose the ability to have their freedom and peace of mind knowing we could get out if we needed to and or wanting to deal with the stress of COVID-19 pandemic and isolation. Thank you both. I hope you are doing well. Sincerely, Brian Montgomery, Richmond, Virginia. Mr. Chair, this concludes the public comment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Montgomery, for your letter to us, and we appreciate the no fare period too, and I'm glad that was helpful, and so proud of our people for the service they provided. All right, so thank you, Ms. Rose Pace. We need to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye, please.
Aye.
Thank you. And I think that's that. We move on to Ms. Torres and the Development and Engagement Report. Good morning.
Good morning. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Great, so what's happened since the last board meeting in regards to CVTA? The full authority did meet on May 28th, and as far as specifically relevant to GRTC is that we did have the opportunity to present the draft Regional Public Transportation Plan as an intro to the priorities that we are recommending for FY22. That is expected to go to the next CVTA meeting, which was tentatively scheduled for, I believe, June 25th, but they are working on getting that actually slated for scheduling. CVTA TAC, the updates I have on here are actually May 10th. So I'll add to that a little bit because we did meet yesterday on June 14th after I turned in my notes. But The Regional Public Transportation Plan also went to the CBTA TAC yesterday and went to both the MPO TAC as well as the MPO Policy Board. So we've kind of gone through several different regional committees. We also did some enhanced outreach to several jurisdictions, both our current partners as well as some of the new rural ones as part of the CBTA. The Transit Governance Report, update, the phase 1 was complete. Phase 2, the Transportation District Analysis. Phase 3, the governance strategies for the peers. And they are at phase 4, where they have completed their draft. They submitted it for public comment. And as of yesterday, they said that they had quite a few comments and are looking, they have already reached out to the state to potentially get an extension on actually turning in the recommendations. But I have listed here kind of the summary of what the draft has in it. They identified several policies and mechanisms that exist today to provide oversight and ensure accountability. So CBTA itself, several of the TPO organizations, the GRTC board were all identified as already in existence as giving oversight. They identified the opportunities and threats establishing a transportation district. So kind of the benefits as well as the threats associated with that. And then identified kind of 4 things that they would recommend for a further study after this one is completed. And that is historical financial investments for GRTC shareholders, GRTC board representation, so looking at the collaboration between the board, the shareholders, and potentially bringing on new appointing boards or board composition. Types and amount and cost for new regional transit service. That ties directly into the Regional Public Transportation Plan, looking at what comes out of it, and types and levels of regional services warranted across all member jurisdictions. And then the GRTC shareholder structure. Further analysis into the GRTC shareholder structure determines value of shares, marginal benefit of shareholder structure, and the benefit of potentially allocating shares in the face of board representation. And then, of course, they're continuing to work on the regional project prioritization. They come up with kind of a list tying it into the LRTP. As far as next dates, we met yesterday, like I said, for TAC, and then I think they're looking into July for the next CBTA meeting, and the Finance Committee meeting was actually canceled. Any questions?
So, yeah, I tried to get on that meeting yesterday. Did it start late? It was not on the channel at 1 o'clock or whenever it was scheduled to be on.
No, it started on time. It was about maybe 45 minutes. It ended a little before an hour.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but anyway, so they are now into types, amount, and cost for new regional transit service in the governance study?
They're just doing as far as looking at additional studies recommended for it. So they would probably refer to the Regional Public Transportation Plan, what comes out of that. If there's kind of additional service, probably in some of the rural jurisdictions, what that would look like in regards to transit governance. So just further analysis in general, because it didn't get into that kind of depth with the transit governance study.
Yeah, it's not a transit governance question, is it?
It's Mr. Campbell, Mr. Chair, if I might jump in. The report itself, because the very short duration of time that they had to do the report from when the scope started to when they had to do it, there wasn't a lot of time for them to go into significant depth. Well, that was one of my comments on the report, is that it didn't get into the depth of the true transit structure and transit needs of our region. It focused a little bit too much on GRTC, and then at the same time didn't focus enough on us, didn't go even in depth on us as well. So there were residual questions left about the structure of transit, not just fixed route transit within the 3 counties or cities that we currently serve, but also the paratransit service within our jurisdiction, the other services that are provided around the region, the other requests for service around the region, and the nature and extent of what those are, how they would be funded, what they look like. None of those questions, of course, are able to be answered at this time, but they could have an impact on how transit in the region is governed. There's just not enough time or enough detail in the study to make any real recommendation on where we should go at this time with the information they have. And
So,
it's a problem with the study.
Are any other board members interested in this besides me? I mean, I really am. I think this thing has got tremendous impact on the future. And whereas we have no power, we do have knowledge. And I've been pursuing it pretty deeply. I'm listening to hear if anybody's squeaking.
I'm very interested in it, but I have 3 great touch points on it. I've got Julie, you, and the Taurus. So I'm happy with the leadership on this issue, but one that does concern me.
Okay.
Yeah, Ben, you know, I've been very interested in it and been trying to understand the technique and what they're really trying to accomplish. And, you know, we're just at the point of, you know, awaiting their report and further, you know, engagement with them to try to come up with a, you know, kind of a final format of what governance may look like.
Well, I think if the state gives them an extension, that it may well be that it would be helpful for some or all of the board of GRTC to respond with comment. And that's the reason I'm asking the question. And so what I will do is pursue this in terms of information with Julie and Adrian, and then get back to the board members about how we might do that if you're interested.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Any further comments on this report? No. All righty. We have next is RideFinders. Vaughn, Ms. Tisdale.
All righty. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, I'll proceed. This grant action item discloses that RideFinders submitted applications for 2 state aid grants from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation for FY22. One grant is for the Van Pool program in the amount of $75,000 with a state allocation of $60,000 and a local match of $15,000. The second grant is mainly for RideFinders operations in the amount of $25,000 with a state allocation of $20,000 and a local match of $5,000 required. The grants total $100,000, $80,000 would be the state contribution, and the $20,000 local match requirement would be fulfilled by the contribution from the counties of Henrico and Chesterfield and the city of Richmond in equal amounts of $7,500 each. We are requesting that the board sign off on the attached resolution that is a requirement of GRPT as an acknowledgement that you are aware that RideFinders applied for the funding, and to place your stamp of approval that RideFinders will administer them in compliance with regulatory guidelines. I think you can be assured of that based on many years of successful audit history that includes external annual and triennial reviews. Thank you.
Thank you. So we need to pass a resolution approving this grant application, correct?
Yes, just to approve that.
All right. So could I have a motion to do so, please?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you so much for your competent and continual work, Ms. Tinsdale, on our behalf. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. A certificate of appreciation to Ephesus Richmond Seventh-day Adventist Church. Ms. Rose Pace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the COVID-19 emergency, members of the community have donated various items to GRTC to support our ongoing operations. These gestures have been so appreciated by our staff, and we continue to receive donations. Beginning in winter of this year, the Ephesus Richmond Seventh-day Adventist Church has delivered dozens of boxes of assorted pastries for GRTC staff. And these are items that were left over from their ministries that would otherwise go to waste. And when I say they've donated pastries, in some cases it's entire cakes or platters of pastries. It has been so generous. The recommendation is that the Board of Directors authorizes the board chair and the CEO to sign a certificate of appreciation saying, GRTC is deeply grateful for your donations during COVID-19 to support our operations during this incredibly difficult time. Your thoughtfulness is sincerely appreciated. The certificate will be printed and shared with the donor, possibly as early as tomorrow. They typically drop off their pastry delivery on Wednesdays.
Thank you. Any comments on this? Would you please notify them of the time of our monthly board meetings?
Yes, we will.
All right, thank you very much. Could I have a motion to approve this?
So
So
moved.
Moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you so much to the Seventh-day Adventist Ephesus Church for this really thoughtful support to our staff.
I was gonna say, who doesn't want to approve pastries?
Yeah, really. As I said, is it the third Tuesday of the month at 8 o'clock? So anyway, thank you, Ms. Rose Pace. Fiscal 22 recruitment. All right, here we go. Go for it, Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Again, we are going to be talking about our plan for the upcoming fiscal year to spend some of our budget on operator recruitment. I will go through a presentation with you and we'll be sharing my screen. So if you'll bear with me for just one moment, I will get that shared for you. This presentation is already also included in the board packet and available for following along online. For those of you who might be watching on our live YouTube stream, you can also follow on the PDF there. All right, so we are beginning fiscal year 22 in just a few weeks, and we will be gearing up for our next round of marketing. These are probably familiar to you, including the faces that you see on these ads. These are just a few samples of the type of marketing messaging that we have been using since early 2019. These are from our most recent run in early 2021. We are really proud to feature these operators in this campaign, and I have to give a shout out for operator Teresa on the left side of the screen. Just this morning, I logged a commendation for her. As people see her face on the bus and on TV and on their mobile phones, they will comment on our Facebook page about how great of a job she does with customer service. So it's wonderful to get that feedback about our operators too. As I mentioned, we started marketing for now hiring for both operators and mechanics in 2019. And you can see based on our Google web traffic to our employment page at ridegrtc.com, the impact that marketing does for driving applicants to look at our employment page and possibly apply. And you can see the bump in web traffic that happens every time we do an advertising push. And our advertising is a combination of both television and digital marketing. Our marketing ads, we know what works, and it's a storytelling. It's a combination of both video and digital resources. Our stories help humanize our workforce, and it gets the message out that GRTC is a good place to work, and you can have a great career with wonderful benefits. We typically split our budget, applying a portion to television resources and a portion to digital. Well, before we get into how we plan to spend more money, let's talk about how we did when we spent our most recent run, which the board approved late last year. Our early 21 run, we received 87 applications. But when we drilled in deeper with human resources and with training and transportation departments, what we found is that 62% of the applicants were screened and rejected. And these are some of the common reasons why. The first one may surprise you. The phone was disconnected or HR did not get a return call back when the applicant was contacted for a phone interview. Many were rejected because they don't have a CDL, and we're going to come back to that point in later slides. Others were rejected simply because they don't have a safe enough driving record, and we will not compromise on safety. Their driving record just didn't have enough points. And for the benefit of the audience who may be watching today, in Virginia, driving, your driver's license has points on it. If you're perfect, you have +5, and you can lose points. They get deducted for behaviors that may not be as safe within Virginia. And then there are availability limitations. And this is really important, especially for newer operators. They have to have unrestricted availability, time of day of the week. So that can be a real challenge, especially during the pandemic, for families who might have caretakers that they're having to take care of children or elderly parents during the pandemic, and it restricts their availability to work at certain times of day. But the great news is that 32% of the applicants in early 21 referenced our television ads specifically. So we know that in addition to the web traffic that I just showed, people are seeing the ads and are reacting to them, which drives them to come and look at our employment page and apply, which is great. But I don't want to discount that there are other methods that we have in our cookbook to generate a great recipe for success. 19% of our applicants referenced our website. Just below that, 17% referenced word of mouth or referrals. We do have 2 referral incentive programs at GRTC right now. One is a gift card program where if you as an employee refer someone to apply, they apply and they get in person to come for an interview, then the referring employee gets a $50 gift card. But we also have another incentive program, which has been longstanding at HR, and it is if an employee refers someone who is then hired and they make it all the way through key benchmarks throughout their first year of employment, then that employee who referred also gets benefits. So we do have those internal programs in place.
So Carrie,
However,
that
yes,
leaves
sir.
that leaves 30 to 40% that you don't know how they found out.
That's correct. Not everyone, when they fill out the online application with GRTC, will note how they heard about the job. It is an optional question that we ask.
Okay.
Out of the early 21 run, we had, again, 87 applicants, 5 were hired, and 1 of those referenced TV. So we know that there are clearly some barriers. We can drive through marketing applicants to our website and to apply, but it's those 4 bullet points, the phone, the no CDL driving record, and availability limitations that are a challenge. So that's why we are collectively working on that connection. What can we do to shore up these gaps in bringing people to the water? How can we get them to drink and stay with us? There are HR and training initiatives that are already being explored. Cheryl, our Chief of Staff, is leading this effort to explore what we can do in-house with the CDL plus passenger endorsement training program, including exploring with the DMV, how can we get all of the CDL tests done at GRTC, not just the last one. There are several steps that you have to take if you are newly getting a CDL, and with COVID backing up DMV appointments, so far, that process can take months for someone who's starting from scratch. We're also looking at a mentorship program that could help shepherd new employees through the process and pair them with someone who is a mentor to them who's already employed here at GRTC. And we mentioned this back in early 21, that we have started reaching out with HR to college and graduate students who might be prime candidates for supervisor positions. This has already started. There is a supervisor and operator salary assessment underway, but I will note that the starting operator hourly rates are now higher than GRTC's starting rate at Richmond Public Schools, Chesterfield Public Schools, and VCU. Henrico Public Schools is the only one that has a starting rate less than GRTC at this time. And I will note that Chesterfield and Richmond are both holding large CDL job fairs this month. So we are up against that. And we are also going to be working on website updates to make our careers information more prominent. So here's the plan. For fiscal year 22, we are recommending a budget of $400,000 total, and that will be spread out over the entire fiscal year, so we won't be spending it all at once. And we are planning to divvy it up, as you can see, with partners that we have had success with over the past 2 years. NBC 12, CBS 6, Fox 35, Work 4, you may recall, is a smaller spend, but it's where we're able to target CDL drivers through Facebook job posts. And we have had success with that this spring, generating daily leads for our recruiter via email. And as more people are going back to more social environments, we do expect that movie theaters may be another smart place to target captive audiences, probably by next spring, early next year, not yet. So that is in our budget for 22. And you may have already seen them. We will continue to update our bus advertisements on the rears of our buses. This is for production and installation only. We are not paying for rent. And then a footnote, our budget for this is not coming from the fiscal year 22 operating budget that you'll be adopting later in this meeting. These are allocated from the federal relief dollars, which Julie had mentioned in prior meetings, can help us with recovering outside of COVID. Our tentative run windows, our first run will likely be the largest run for about 10 to 11 weeks, starting in August and going just into mid-October. So we'll capture some of the fall premieres, sports, and also getting some of the attention of news viewers as they're getting back into their normal fall school and job routines. That is estimated at a little over $220,000. Now, the other amounts will be subsequent on how we do with the first run. We are going to analyze as a team in conjunction with these other new initiatives that I just shared with HR and training and transportation to see how we can adjust the mix and make sure that we're getting the right messaging out and taking the fullest advantage of this budget that we have allocated. I'm not going to read all of this. I just wanted to have it available for you to digest and for the public to see as well, so that you can understand the tactics that we are using with each partner. And as I mentioned, everything's split, for some resources going to television, broadcast, and some going to digital, which can, of course, include streaming ads on our OTT platforms like Amazon, Roku, Apple TV. With WTVR, CBS 6, a similar split between on-air and digital resources. And I will point this out, CBS 6 has a digital, it's almost like a ticker that you see when you're browsing on your mobile device. And that ad messenger has been extremely beneficial in generating clicks for us. So it's NBC 12 and CBS 6 that have been the top performers for us in generating that activity to our website for applications. Fox 35, we all know they have great NFL games, so we will continue partnering with them for that. And they also have an earlier evening newscast, which can capture some of the earlier risers the following morning. Work 4 will continue with those daily targeted leads going to our recruiter. And as I mentioned, as people get back into more social environments, we do believe that Cinemedia with movie theater advertisements will be a good placement, and continuing to use our rent-free space on the rears of our buses. So this concludes my report. I will be happy to answer questions at this time.
Any questions? I'm excited by this, Carrie. Thank you so much. And obviously the issue is follow through as well. When we get people to contact us, we can't afford to lose that high percentage of the people who get to us.
Right, we're generating the interest. It just sounds like in today's competitive job market, we need to be filling a little bit more. And we're not the only ones looking at these programs. This is a nationwide issue. We just had a conversation with Peer Transit Systems on Friday in Virginia about what they're doing to adapt and get people in the driver's seat.
And we are addressing the salary issue elsewhere, correct?
Yes.
All right. Any further questions? Yeah.
I think it's important, though, that we do help us or try to do as best we can to get the CDL, because that's probably the biggest difficulty they have. They're probably good drivers, but never had to meet the CDL requirements. And anything we can do to enhance that and make it easier for them, I think will help us get more drivers.
And we are doing that, correct?
Yes, we have new programs that will be addressing that. As I mentioned, our Chief of Staff, Cheryl, has been working with the DMV to see what barriers we can remove from their appointment system at a physical DMV and what we can transfer over to our property and to our training department.
Okay, thank
And
you.
Mr. Campbell, Mr.
Mhm.
Chairman, this is an action item asking for approval for this spend for the year for the recruitment efforts.
All right,
Not
so
to
it's,
exceed $400,000.
I need a motion to approve this up to 400,000.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Anybody opposed? It's done. Thanks for your good work.
Can I be heard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, I just was checking my mic because
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, is that it for Carrie?
Yes, sir.
All right, operations and maintenance report. Cheryl, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. So the operations and maintenance report will be given by staff. We're starting with Mr. Tony Carter, who's going to give you your safety report.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
I'll be going over the safety performance report for the month of May, found in your board packet. Starting with the results for the month, and I want to bring a quick note too. If you view the actual report, you'll see that we changed up the terminology a little bit, trying to be in line with SMS as well as getting away from the terms of accidents. NTD defined these now as events and incidents. So as I go through the report, you'll notice the changes. Also, the definition will be at the bottom of the actual report to give you a little bit more definition on what we use as nomenclature for the actual events and incidents and what they mean. Once again, starting with the results for this month. External events. In the month of April, we had 35. In the month of May, we had 33. Non-preventable events. In April, we had 21. In May, we had 19. And preventable events remain the same with the number of being of 14. The majority of those type of events were fixed objects, bus mirrors making contact with signs, minor contact with tree limbs, things of that nature. We did see a decline in the amount of rear end events, meaning where the vehicles rear the actual buses. We only had one for this month. So a lot of the information, a lot of attention that we're putting with the operators to try to keep them safe with those type of events is really seeing the output. We continue to work with maintenance when it comes to the actual signs that are going on the back of the bus. That's a process that we're working on and hope to see results on that very soon. We did have one pedestrian incident for the month of May. Although that's still under investigation, all indications and reports show that there were no serious injuries. It was some case of the operator making a right turn, passenger stepped off the curb and contact was made with the actual bus. As I stated, that is still under investigation, but all reports show that there are no serious injuries with that. Some of the headlines to take away from this report for the month of May. We did see an overall decrease in accidents from April to May. We did see an overall decrease in traffic events. Some of the performance indicators, if you look at your report, we did change or update some things. Miles between NTD defined events and NTD defined event rate per 1 million miles. Now what we did was basically looked at NTD, which is National Transit Database. And each month we have to report statistics to that for type of events that we have. And this is something that all agencies across the nation have to do. And what I was able to do is look at some of the agencies that are comparable to the vehicle revenue miles that we have and do some type of averages so that we can gauge where we are compared to other agencies with comparable vehicle revenue miles. If you look, agency averages miles between total NTD defined events, 11,540. For the month of May, GRTC was at 15,667. So we're doing pretty good in that category. NTD defined event rates per million miles. The agency averages that I looked at were right at 3.5. GRTC is right at 3.2, so we can do a little bit of work on that. Some of the transit agencies that I looked at with comparable miles compared to us were Central North New York Regional Transit Authority out of Syracuse, South Central Transit Authority out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, City of Memphis out of Memphis, Tennessee, Birmingham Transit Authority out of Birmingham, Alabama, and Gainesville Transit Authority out of Gainesville, Florida. And like I said, these are good options that we can look at just to gauge where we are compared to other agencies and what they're doing. We'll continue to build this data and reflect over the years, sort of like we did with the preventable and non-preventable events, just to give us a gauge of where we are based off our data as well as other agencies across the nation. We're continuing to get good feedback from when the operators actually come in and are looking at the videos to get coaching from the training staff to brush up on their techniques. And we're constantly having training videos virtually so that they can improve their overall driving performance. Get good results from the safety blitz that the training department as well as the transportation department, what the road supervisors are doing just to monitor the overall operations and how they're interacting with the customers. So we hope to keep these numbers down and keep everybody as safe as possible. And if there are no questions, that concludes the safety performance report for the month of May.
Scholes.
Yes, I have a question. Does this include the ADA service, or do you keep records of that and present that to the board, or can you do that?
I haven't been reporting on the ADA on the special transit side. That's been in. I can get that information. They have their own safety manager who keeps track on that information as well. But if that's something that the board would like, I could certainly start, making a report on that just to give statistics of where we are with that as well. Or if I don't know if Mia's online, this may be something that the general manager for SpecTran can do as well. But that's certainly something that we can provide if you like.
Mr. Chairman, if I might also add on, and Tim can add to this too, but on pages 43 and 44 of the board report and our operational report, there is information on there on the SpecTran. If you would like the SpecTran included on future safety reports with Tony, we can certainly add that. So you can specifically address this.
All right.
I think it would be important to hear that information or receive that information.
Okay, let's do it then, please. Thank you, Eldridge. And Tony, thank you. Any further comments on this?
Yes, I have a question. Was the numbers for May, was that a surprise that it went down, considering, people are back in the world and because everything else bad is ticking up.
Yeah.
Back. I mean, the fact that we were able to avoid that.
Yeah.
Was that a surprise, or was that,
Well, I'd like to say that it was always a wonderful thing when we see numbers go down, and I attribute it to that wonderful group of operators and training staff that we have. But yeah, to be frank, yes, it was a surprise. But honestly, I mean, so far, and I don't want to jinx anything, but we're seeing good numbers in the month of June as well so far. So I mean, we're certainly not going to, shut anything down or do anything different. But yeah, usually this time of the year, with, like I said, things opening back up, especially with the summertime and everything, we do see numbers tend to increase. But we're certainly not going to knock anything.
Could just be counterintuitive, more people, more pedestrians, more car, and everybody's a little more heightened or something.
Exactly.
I was really glad to hear that they, people have lowered the rate of running into the back of stuff. That's a good thing here. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Carter. And I think we're with Mr. Barham next, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and everyone. Good morning. Want to start with the KPIs, starting with OTP. We're still around 65%, so no significant change in that area. Continuing to move forward with the initiatives that we've talked about in prior months. having more proactive measures put in with the addition of staff, administrative staff helping out in the radio room as well, helping to monitor the service. We are experiencing more detours due to road work and other construction that's going on in the area. And just a note, as we get more into the summer months, we've had several requests for additional detours coming up as a result of special events that are going on that result in street closures and so forth. So as restrictions are being lifted, more people are going out. Looks like we're going to have more events that are going to cause additional detours. So we'll manage around those accordingly. Our lost time rate, absenteeism for our operators did go down this past month, a little over 15%. We're still experiencing similar issues as we had in past months with vaccine doses that are being administered. People still may be having some of the ill effects from the second dose, and then vacations and other factors as well. And conversely, lost trips. We're at 1,624, which was about just under 98% of our trips that operated. So we did, get a slight improvement in that area. With specialized transportation, still holding steady around 93% on-time performance. Had about 14 complaints, which is about the same as we had prior month. And also we had an increase in accommodations up to 4 from this past month. Staffing, we're currently at 265 full-time operators and 18 part-time operators. We had 3 operators that graduated back on May the 30th. We had 5 that were extended offers for our class that started last week or 2 weeks ago on the 7th. But we did have 3 that eventually accepted offers and started training with our current class. We're continuing with our recruitment efforts. You saw the presentation that Carrie had as well. So we're going to continue to push forward with as best we can to get more operators in and to look at ways in which we can retain our current operators also. And just a little side note with the service that we are operating, First Transit has been helping out this past year since the onset of the pandemic by doing some of the express routes because of the ridership drop. They had additional operators available to help on that side. As ridership continues to grow on both fixed route and paratransit, we have to look at that balance, and at some point, we're probably going to have to look at pulling those resources back to their primary service, which is the care service. So we want to make sure that as we continue to hire, recruit, and use overtime operators and supervisors, that we're able to maintain a decent level of service, once we do have to shift those resources back to the paratransit side. And also on the recruitment standpoint, we met last week. I think a lot of our staff here, along with other VTA members, Virginia Transit Association members throughout the Commonwealth, met last week and had a open discussion about best practices and areas that we can look at in terms of recruitment. And we share some thoughts and ideas across the state with different agencies to hopefully get some momentum from that as well as we move forward with our recruitment efforts. COVID-19, just want to touch briefly. We have 263 currently employees within the organization that have become fully vaccinated. So we're over 50% as far as people within the organization, which is right around the national average. We had another 12 that have reported to have at least 1 dose. And on the First Transit side, there's about 19 employees so far that are fully vaccinated. So we're going to encourage our employees to get vaccinated. We do have an on-site event, which we're going to have doses available. We worked in conjunction with the Virginia Department of Health and the local Richmond and the Henrico health districts to have on-site vaccine doses administered. The first one is going to be on July the 1st. And the second one for those who need the second dose will be on July the 22nd. And they're going to be 2 times on each of those dates, 8 and 11 in the morning and 2 to 6 in the evening. So you don't need an appointment. All First Transit GRTC employees who haven't been vaccinated are encouraged to do so at either one of those times. We're offering Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson. And of course, with the Pfizer, you need both doses. And with Johnson & Johnson, just one dose. So we'll have that coming up here in the next few weeks. But if there are no other questions or comments, that concludes my report.
Yeah, just a question. I mean, I've noticed this probably quite a few months ago, but are our expectations unrealistic when I see some of these? I mean, we've got for months, it's been not in line with the goal. I mean, how do you come up with your goals? I guess that's my question. Like for instance, lost time rate, you got 9% across the board. We haven't come close to that, maybe with the exception of September. And I see that quite a bit in some of these various graphs.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Mr. Smith, we've had some discussions about revamping, our KPIs overall and to restructuring it, to be quite honest with you. I've had some conversations with Cheryl and Julie in regards to that, and to reset those goals to be more in line with what we've been operating over the past couple of years. So you're right. We have had some thoughts on that. We do have some drafts that we're working on. So hopefully, coming here soon, we will be looking at revamping and redoing some of those KPIs.
I mean, it'd be nice to meet the goals, but when you see this consistency here over a 12-month period, it just seems like you set goals that are unachievable.
Yeah, and they should be, SMART goals, and you're right, realistic, achievable, and so forth. So yes, we are looking at doing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Tim, do you keep separate statistics on with regard to OTP for late and early?
Yes, we track the number of earlies, and we do it by route and by operator, as well as lates. We've seen a higher proportion of earlies, and a lot of that may be contributed to traffic on the roadways and so forth. We get feedback from our operators. Our scheduling department has been looking and tracking that as well. So when we do have a booking, we do plan on making adjustments to those schedules to make them more in line with how they're actually operating.
Yeah, I am really watching that one, and it's got to get better. I know there's some issues this month, but we've got to get that one up. And earlies especially are just really serious problem, as you know. So
yes, sir.
Any further comments on this? Thank you so much for an excellent and thorough report. All right. Ridership, Mr. Ross.
Good morning. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. So I'll be reviewing our monthly ridership report for the month of May. And this is, of course, using the new format that I reviewed with you last month. So as you can see, for total fixed route ridership, we're looking at 631,713 riders for the month of May. As compared to the previous month, April 2021, we're down slightly, 1.44%. And that can really be attributed to a couple things. We had the Memorial Day holiday during the month of May. So we did run a Sunday schedule. And that also, we had one less weekday. So that can account for that slight difference. As compared to May 2020, we are, of course, 20% up from being kind of in the midst of the pandemic. If we compare to May 2019, we are still just over 18% down. But as you can see on our graph here, we are still trending upward, and we're still aiming to reach our pre-COVID ridership numbers. Very similar trend for care service. And you can see again in the graph on the right, we are again trending upward in hopes of achieving our pre-COVID numbers. That's really all I have for you this morning. Any questions?
Well, that's excellent. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Any questions? All right, and maintenance, Mr. Goins.
Good morning, everyone. We've established a goal of 5,200 miles between road calls. The miles between road calls for the month of May was 6,888 miles, which is an improvement from the month of April, which was 5,347 miles. We have an average of 7,177 miles between road calls during the last 12 months. Currently, 13% of the fixed route fleet and 16% of the paratransit fleet are out of service for parts and repairs. This is slightly up from last month, which was 10% across the board. Delivery of fleet parts from Gillig, Cummins, and other manufacturers during the pandemic has begun to pick up. And Cummins is also on site making warranty repairs as well as delivering parts slowly. However, this has not impacted service. GRTC continues to clean and disinfect the entire fleet daily. That concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Eldridge, does that sound right to you?
Sound pretty good.
All right.
My question is, the PMs having a problem with PMs as far as getting parts due to COVID?
Not the PMs, no, sir. No, sir. We tend to be able to maintain that. It's usually the more major parts like repairs for engine repairs and the transmission repairs and like that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Goins. And I see that we have an action item that you need to present to us.
Yes, sir. GRTC provides maintenance personnel with uniforms that meet durability, protective, and cleaning requirements necessary to remain comfortable and presentable. Currently, uniform needs are met through a uniform rental services contract with UniFirst Corporation Services will end effectively July 1, 2021. Staff need to secure another service provider to continue to provide appropriate attire for maintenance personnel. Consequently, an invitation for bid was issued on March 19, 2021. Bids were received from Centos Corporation No. 2 and UniFirst Corporation. After reviewing each submission, it was determined that UniFirst Corporation was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. In addition to uniforms, UniFirst will provide shop towels, floor mats, and emblems for uniforms. Rented uniforms, towels, and mats will be maintained, cleaned, and distributed weekly. The agreement consists of 2-year base term with 1 2-year renewal option. Based on historical usage and application of UniFirst's bidded rates, staff estimates the annual cost of this agreement to be $25,000. All unit prices will remain the same during the renewal period, resulting in annual estimated expenditure of $100,000 for 4 years. However, staff requests the board to approve a total contract value not to exceed $150,000 to account for fluctuation in needs and staff expansion. This is an operating expense currently budgeted within the draft fiscal year 2022 baseline budget. The recommendation is that the board of directors authorize the CEO to execute a contract with UniFirst not to exceed $150,000 for uniform rental services for an initial term of 2 years. Furthermore, staff requests giving the CEO's authority to exercise the 1 2-year renewal option if a review of pricing and the contract's performance determined is in the GRT's best interest.
Okay, could I have a motion to this effect, and we'll discuss it if need be?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All right.
Yeah,
Discussion?
Yeah, just a question. So we've chosen the UniFirst, but obviously we're still trying to wrestle the whole deal to the ground because there's no specific dollar amounts. Is that the case, or is it pretty much set and we've gone through everything and we're at the signing period?
Dave, could you need help? Tanya, thank you.
I can assist. So we do have unit prices set in place. That's what the bids were based on. So we have established unit prices, but usage may fluctuate. If we get new staff, if we have more damaged uniforms or lost uniforms, that's going to make the price fluctuate. That's why we've asked for a contract value not to exceed $150,000.
Got it.
Yeah, that's a big slide. I mean, it's not like it's a whole lot of money we're dealing with, but that's a 50% slide is pretty high on that.
If I can
Yeah,
explain
I
that,
wish we could
Mike.
get enough staff to use another 50%, but
Well, yes, and this is for a 4-year period, that when we know that the CVTA funds are going to be coming out within probably the next year, we are staffing up for that over this next year. So potentially out of the 4 years of the contract, the goal is to have 3 years of those be fully staffed and possibly even expanding staff. So putting the contract at just the average based on what we've been doing with when we're understaffed really would put us at a disadvantage for the life of the contract.
any further questions? Yes.
Who do we
George.
currently use? I'm sorry.
Oh, Danny, sorry. Yeah.
So who do we currently use? Is this a renewal for them, or is this a new vendor for us? I mean, I say new, they've been around for a while.
We currently use UniFirst. However, this was a new procurement and they happen to be the lowest responsible bidder again.
Just curious.
Any further questions, comments? All right, we'll vote then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you very much for this presentation. Mr. Goins. And now we have Mr. Barham with ADIA ride renewal, I think.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I just shared my screen here. You should see on page 55 in your board packet, if you wish to look on as well, the action item in relation to ADA ride. Just a background, back in 2013, June 18, 2013, Board of Directors awarded the contract to ADA ride. It provides paratransit client services. The contract was for 5 years to be renewed period of 3 years. Then a second option for 2 years. We're here today to exercise that second option renewal for the remaining 2-year period of the contract. Some highlights, the scope of the work entailed eligibility for ADA eligible customers for 79 years or younger for either applying or for renewing of the services for care or a paratransit service. GRTC does the certification for clients 80 and above. The contractor, they have a 800 number that customers call into from the hours of 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. local time, providing mail out packets, professional eligibility determinations. They provide data storage. Applications also available on the website. They use transfer of user profiles, data downloads, and notification letters to the client. So those are the services that they provide. Back in August 1st of 2018 through September 30th of 2021, that's when the 3-year renewal took place for $189,108 for the contracted services. So for years 9 and 10, the last of the contract, the amount is going to be $129,864, which is a 3% increase for the last part of the renewal. So staff is pleased with ADA Ride and the services they've been providing based on their performance. And staff is recommending that GRTC continue to utilize ADA Ride services. The contract is fully funded from the operating budget. And we're recommending that the Board of Directors authorizes the CEO to exercise option 2 for a period of 2 years for the total amount of $129,864.
Thank you. Do you have any idea how many people they process a year for us?
Ooh, I had that information. I should have it off the top of my head, but I don't have it right in front of me. But maybe before the end of the meeting, I'll have that for you. But I do have that data.
That would be a good thing to know. We're paying them about $200 a day, it looks like. It's not a whole lot of money. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on this? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much, Mr. Barnum. So our next item is,
Mr. Chair, if
Yeah.
I might, I just found the email. Tim actually did provide that information to me, and so he was very responsive in having it really quickly. In 2019, there were 927 completed applications. In 2020, there were 528, and in 2021, to date, there were 235 completed applications. Of those, there were a significant number, 700 were new, 227 were recertified in 2019, which seems a pretty consistent trend. The use of the application process is clearly down because of COVID, but pre-COVID, it looked like about 1,000 a year.
Do you have to get recertified on this?
There are, for certain conditions,
Uh-huh.
there might be
Okay.
there's conditional improvement. There's certain conditions where if a disability is permanent, I'd have to check. And Tim, can you but I believe that's how ours is set up.
So it's
Yes.
not automatic recertification every year or something. It's just if something changes for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
okay.
part of, yes. Mhm.
Any
If you
further
get
comment on
certified,
this?
if you had like a hip replacement
Yeah.
surgery that puts you out for 6 months, you get certified. If you're blind, however, you would not necessarily need to get recertified.
Great, thank you. Okay, thanks a lot, Mr. Barr and Ms. Tim. So Rob, I think we have something, Mr. Taggart, route match maintenance agreement.
Morning, Mr. Chair and board members. Route Match is the software, as you know, that powers our specialized transport division. This is the software for the booking of the rides, routing the rides, as well as the automatic vehicle locator system for the actual trips. It's time for our annual maintenance on this system. The annual maintenance includes not only service and support as well as software updates, but it also covers the cost of the interactive voice response system that calls our riders, as well as the cloud hosting environment that actually hosts the system. This will be funded completely with federal, state, and local funds. And the recommendation to the board is that the board authorizes the CEO to issue a purchase order to Route Match for the total cost of $131,057 for these services.
Could I have a motion to this effect?
So moved.
Second.
So Rob, does this enable somebody who's fulfilling one trip to include someone else on the trip? Or
Yeah, I mean, this is the software that powers the whole thing. So when they call into the call center, they would let them know that they have someone else riding with them. And so it takes all of that information into account, where the trip is starting from and going to, and then the system is what automatically routes all of the trips, the hundreds of trips we get in every day and requests. This system routes them, organizes them, optimizes them, and then plans out the various routes for all the First Transit drivers. It provides the interface for the customer service, and then it actually transmits those trips to tablets for the actual operators to be able to view their route and follow their route as far as what their next stop is. Plus, it powers the voice response where you get the phone call that says, hey, your ride is going to be arriving in the next 15 minutes, etc.
And the effect of that is that a guy can pick up more than one person, the driver can pick up more than one person in different places and take them to different places.
Correct.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions on this? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much, Mr. Taggart. Mr. Zinzarella.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, we're on page 58 of the package, and this is the introduction screen. I'm going to give the highlights for the financial report for the 10 months ending April 30th of 2021. On slide 59, starting out with the source of funds statement. As I have briefed you in the prior months, we still have the same trends. Revenue for the 10 months ended April 30th, 2021 is unfavorable, $3.2 million on a budget of $50.2 million, so it's about 6.3%. Primarily, the unfavorable performance is in the federal funds, and as we have discussed previously, the operating expenses have been favorable, so therefore, since the majority of the federal funds are reimbursement expenses are lower than budgeted, so are the revenues going to be lower than budgeted. We still do have the continued favorable performance in advertising revenues. in the directly generated funds portion. And, you know, we still have the same consistent local governments funds, just slightly unfavorable. That's due to the reimbursement for COVID with respect to the Chesterfield operating contributions. And we still have the performance, a favorable performance on the state government funds. Slide 60 is the tile version of this information and with a little bit of a narrative as well, and shows the pie charts as the pieces. Slide 61 is the eye chart, which we now have broken up into the sections on pages 62 to 71. So I'm going to start and go through on slide 62, basically for the operating expenses for the 10 months ended April 30th of 2021. Down on the bottom of slide 63, you can see that it's favorable $2.86 million for the 10 months. Now, this is a reduction. The prior month's report, we were approximately $3.68 million favorable. I know that we've discussed this previously, that the budget calendarization, as we realized it or experienced in October and November, we're experiencing it again on the April-May, because the month of April had 3 payrolls in it, versus the budget was calendarized in May to have the 3 payrolls. So the total impact in the narrative, just on the operators, it's $700,000. But when you roll in, the benefits and the maintenance, as well as the G&A salaries and the non-revenue salaries, you have about a total of a $1.1 million blip, which will reverse out in the month of May. So right now, you'll see the labor variance here for the 10 months through April 30th is $389,000 positive. In the prior month through March, it was $1.35 million favorable. So we're expecting that to go back up to that level at the end of May. So basically, the labor variances here have been diminished because of the calendarization. But looking at the other components, the services, very similar to the prior month's report. Services is favorable, $1.5 million through the 10 months. And that's, in the professional and technical services being driven by the BRT fare collection and security services, because we're zero fares. We're having a cost avoidance around $270,000 versus budget. The audit fees, favorable about $31,000. That's due to timing. And also use of the consulting services, $48,000 is based on timing of projects. In addition, on contract maintenance, you have $770,000 favorable, which is also primarily on building maintenance, timing of actual projects versus what was contemplated in the budget. And consistent with the prior months, you'll see that on the materials and services consumed, it's unfavorable $1.4 million roughly. And that's primarily due to the impacts of COVID. And these are the expenses that are being covered on the other side by the COVID relief funds through the 3 different installments. And purchased transportation is favorable based on the lack of use due to COVID as well at $2.1 million. Very similar to what was shared in the months of in March and so forth. The only major issue with expenses is the calendarization versus budget. Slides 72 to 74 are the tiles. As you can see, this is just the table format of what I've just gone through in a summary format. You can see here that the actual operating expense per mile is just shy of $10, which is still favorable to what the budget amount was, but it obviously it's a little bit higher, but due to the calendarization issue, as well as the revenue hours. Down in here, as well as we were talking about head count, we're still 22 heads favorable relative to the budget, primarily transportation. 16 is further exemplifies the importance of what Carrie had talked about the recruiting program and advertising for it, as well as Tim has shared previously, as well as we have 11 vacancies in maintenance as well. So those are primarily continuing to drive the favorable labor variances, even though it's been hidden this month through the calendarization. Excuse me. Looking at overtime for the month of April, a comparing it to year to date, it's at a lighter pace as a percentage of the base hours than it was through the 10 months. Obviously, this is, overtime is, for transportation maintenance, is based upon the vacancies. We need to have overtime in order to fill the routes as well as to do the preventive maintenance slots required to keep the buses on the street. Moving over to the income statement, which is on slide 75. You can see here for the current month, the $1.5 million unfavorable variance. That's primarily due to the calendarization issue. But looking year to date, you have your $3.2 million unfavorable on the net operating revenue line. And you can see the favorable $2.86 million operating expenses netting to its, at this current point, with the calendarization issue, it's showing an unfavorable net position of $331,000, but offset that with $1.1 million budget calendarization. We're still in that same position where we were at the end of March, about $800,000 surplus based upon the current year operations, expenses, and revenues. Moving over to the balance sheet on slide 76, you still see, in comparing on the cash line to the prior fiscal year end in June, we still have a stronger cash position. Our accounts receivable is a lower amount due to the realization and moving it up into cash. Other notable items here on the balance sheet is the other current liabilities is up. This is due to booking of the additional pension liability, as well as we had a late arrival of a utility bill, which was basically put in here as a miscellaneous accrual. So that's what the roughly $500,000 increase is associated with. As you can see in here, on the other assets section, we have the restricted funds for the CBTA special funds, which we'll see the report later. We have $11.6 million, and we have just opened an LGIP account. So we're going to start investing some of that based upon our cash flow projections. Once the regional transportation plan has been approved, we'll figure out what the needs will be on a quarterly basis and act accordingly with the cash flow plan. Moving over to slide 77 on the cash flow projection. As noted in the prior month's briefing, the forecast in April was expected a decrease in cash around 1.6 million, which did happen. Just to refresh everyone's memory, March was inflated upward due to the receipt of the quarterly installment from the city of Richmond. So basically, we're now working that down in the cash position, which is forecast, and we're anticipating another decrease of around $1.5 million for the month of May. Then looking forward is, we're looking to come down a little bit further to the end of June, and then we'll be establishing, once the fiscal 22 budget comes, we'll establish a new cash flow forecast going forward once that budget's approved. Items in there that will help is once the regional transportation plan is approved, the process would be is drawing down in a quarter, in the beginning of the quarter for CBTA funds. So as you'll see in the budget, the CBTA revenues for fiscal 22 is $20 million. So roughly $5 million will be anticipated to be drawn down at the beginning of the quarter, but that's pending once the regional transportation plan has been approved. And with that cash flow inflow and outflow, we'll take that into consideration with the investing in the LGIP program. As I mentioned before, moving over to slide 78 and the CBTA funds. These are quarterly reports, but I'm going to keep the same format, but just kind of add each month to it, and then we'll file the second quarterly report as of June 30th, 2021 by August 15th, as required by the MOA. So during the month of April, our receipts from the 15% funds distribution was $1.88 million, which represented the month of March collections, and there were no uses in that month. There is an invoice that is going to be paid in the month of May, I believe. That was paid in the month of May for the consulting services for the regional public transportation plan. So at the end of April, we had a balance of $11.646 million in the CBTA funds. And with that, I will conclude my report and open the floor to questions from anyone from the members of the board.
Thank you, sir. Are there, so when you look at this, are there any places that particularly alarm you or that you are particularly happy about?
I'm happy with the, as I mentioned on the balance sheet, the improvement in the cash positions and so forth over the prior year. It's some of it's cyclical, but also the tools in place, tracking the cash forecast and understanding the pieces is very beneficial and helpful. Better coordination and collaboration with the staff on the grants and the timing of it is also helpful. One of the items in there is that we're waiting for the FTA to execute the fiscal 21 preventative maintenance grant, which is $7.5 million. So that we ended up exhausting the fiscal year 2020, I think is either in the middle of February or the beginning of March. So it's very helpful that staff has this kind of detail and can funnel it up to myself and Julie, so we're aware of everything that goes on. So
are there any areas of expense that particularly concern you?
Not at this point. I obviously the story here is and which we're going to talk about in the future is that we have tremendous vacancies in the operators and maintenance that's driving favorable budget performance on the expenses. Obviously, that's probably has also implications on our on-time performance and everything else, and excused absences, because if we're overworking and driving overtime when we're retiring some of our operators out. So what we're going to talk about shortly in the fiscal 22 budget are some programs that can help, that Carrie has highlighted from the advertising to get operators in the door. And then Cheryl and company are working on the programs to help get us through. And I can personally attest, I have to wait till the end of July to get an appointment at DMV to register my vehicles and get a driver's license here in the state. So there are some obstacles, but I think that we staffed collectively with Julie and Cheryl, myself, and Adrian have put together some things that we think can help attack some of the metrics, and as well as tend to some of the variances are favorable because we don't have people, and then not having people to drive the buses and maintain it, putting a stress on some of our other metrics of customer service related.
That's money we would rather be spending. We did not discuss, Julie or John or Cheryl, the issue of maintenance recruitment. That's 11 personnel short that seems to be regularly showing up here. Do we need to do something about that we're not doing?
Cheryl, were you going to fix that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Julie. Yes. Maintenance has been an issue. Part of the problem is hiring mechanics with this, because we are in a union environment and the hours, we're 24-hour shop. It is very difficult to hire. However, we've not stopped trying to hire. Melissa, when she goes to job fairs, is still recruiting for mechanics, and we are still actively going to schools. We have an apprenticeship program where we were able to successfully get one mechanic out of that, and we're going to start that up again. So we do have options for the maintenance department that we are actively doing and trying to hire. And the apprenticeship program is a good way because we're able to go to the trade schools and start people at a younger age. And by the time they complete the apprenticeship program, they're full-time mechanics. And we started with 3 and we ended up with 1. So we were pleased with that one, and hopefully the next go around, we've learned some things, we'll be more successful in that. So we are working on that as well. So good question. Thank you.
Yeah, we need to be doing something we have not been doing if we're continuing to be unable to hire there. So we've done a good job analyzing that on the driver's side, and I trust we'll be doing that on the mechanic side.
Yeah, and as I stated, we still are doing those things, and we're looking at other avenues to get personnel as well. And while I'm on, I received an email just now, so we are one step closer to getting permission to do the CDL learner's permit testing on site. We just got notice that the commissioner signed off on our ability to do that. So that's a step in the right direction. We'll have a meeting with them sometime this month. We'll work with IT to get the computer set up because it's all computerized. And my vision is to have this up and running by the beginning of July.
All right,
That is
great,
wonderful news.
Yes, it is.
I have a
excellent.
question, Ben.
Yep.
In regards to CVTA funds, I know we're still in a startup phase, so to speak, but the amount is growing up to be $11.6 million. Do we have any idea how that's going to be expended, or do we won't know until they kind of give us more direction on how we can use it?
Well, as you'll see in our fiscal 22 budget, the CVTA forecast for that is $20.1 million, and that is for use of both GRTC operations as well as capital. So we have the breakout, and that was one of the budget adjustments that we went through from when we spoke to you last in May about the budget. The state of Virginia had finalized their grants as to what they, based on demand. There are certain local shares that had to be adjusted and so forth. So we know how we know how we're planning to spend it, and throw that in the budget.
Thank you. Any further questions of Mr. Zinzarella? Thank you very much for that comprehensive report, sir. Recent and upcoming procurements, Ms. Thompson.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Procurements report can be found on pages 79 and 80 of your board packet. We have added 12 new procurements to the list since the last board meeting, and I'd like to highlight a few of them. Last month, Rob presented our plan to replace our obsolete enterprise resource planning system. The solicitation posted June 4th. We will hold our pre-proposal meeting tomorrow, and proposals are due by 11 a.m. on July 16th. Also of note are the last 7 projects listed on the report. The planning department will be busy for the remaining of the year with different studies and plans. The first is the FY23 Regional Public Transportation Plan. Staff will be building off of the FY21 plan to further identify regional priorities related to CVTA funds. A budget of $200,000 has been established for this project, and it is our intention to bring a recommendation for award to the board in July. Secondly is the microtransit study, which also has a budget of $200,000. Because localities have different mobility needs, GRTC would like to conduct a regional study considering types of mobility services that will complement our fixed route service. The next project listed is a feasibility study for the BRT corridors. In consideration is extending the pulse west on Broad Street beyond the current Willow Lawn terminus in a north-south line from Chamberlain to a corridor south of the river. The budget for this project is $1,030,000. The dedicated lane study with a budget of $460,000 will identify which road segments within the system would yield the greatest impact to on-time performance if converted to fully dedicated bus-only lanes. FTA requires the update of our transit asset management plan every 4 years. The plan will assess assets' state of good repair and help us prioritize capital projects and funding requests. In conjunction with the TAM plan, staff would like to develop a facilities master plan to identify needs, develop a strategic plan for the use of our current buildings, obtain conceptual designs for growth in our buildings and our adjacent property known as the church property. The budget for the TAM plan is $110,000 and $880,000 for the facilities maintenance master plan. And lastly is the neighborhood transfer center study. GRTC would like to analyze the current use of the bus stop at 23rd and Franklin Streets as a major transfer point of 5 routes and identify other curb locations that could serve as a transfer point. We have earmarked $180,000 for this study. This concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Wasn't that neighborhood transfer center study listed on somebody else's funding thing, a regional funding thing?
Adrian,
It was, yeah, it was also listed, in the LRTP, maybe.
That's
you're
it,
thinking of-
LRTP, right. All right, any questions on this? Gosh, that's a lot of studying going on.
it is
A
a lot of
to go
work.
for a period of time here. Summertime.
I assume somebody will pay for everything on that list if you're after it.
Yeah, between
all these-
CVTA funds and grant funding.
The majority of this has all been approved, and you'll hear from Keisha in a few minutes, from the state grants that we applied for when we gave you that list back in December, January. We applied for the grants, and the grants came back. So these are all part of federal and state grant awards.
I have a sledgehammer, and I'd be willing to go after that church property next door. If there's an RFP out for that, just let me know.
I'll help you, Ben.
Thank you.
Demo day.
I did go over there. We need to release some energy.
Yeah.
Yes.
All righty. Thank you very much for this. Is there anything we need to approve? Yes. No.
No, sir.
Zinzarella's got something. Thank you, Tanya.
All right, I'm going to share my screen again.
Oh, the budget. Yeah, that's important.
I'm going to go through some slide decks with regards to the fiscal year 22 GRTC proposed operating budget, and then I'll yield the floor to Keisha. The capital budget was presented at the May meeting, as well as the operating budget. There aren't any changes to the capital portion, but because we're going to ask for a resolution today, Keisha can kind of give you a high level overview of last meetings. But starting here with the fiscal year 2022 proposed operating budget. It starts on slide 82, and I'm going to talk right off of slide 83 because I think this will put us some nice context, and we can discuss the initiatives that we have undertaken since we last spoke. So in this first far left column here, this is the January board meeting when we first put the fiscal year 2022 baseline budget and presented it, and then subsequent up to working up to the May meeting, myself, Julie, Adrian, and Cheryl sat down and we kind of took on an exercise looking at the organization structure and the manning levels, and we basically kind of, for lack of better terms, took a zero-based budget approach to the manning levels and the various functions. In addition, we also removed the expenses related to the fare collection, as the assumption would be that the budget would be zero fare through at least the end of fiscal 22. So this third column over here is what we presented, the $61.2 million operating expense and correspondingly $61.2 million operating revenues. That's what we presented at the May's board meeting to highlight what we had been doing since the January meeting. At that point, we had said that there were several other initiatives that we were currently working on and that we were going to come back with the final budget here in the June meeting. And so here we are. So earlier in the meeting, you heard Carrie Rose Pace brief us on the advertising and marketing program aimed specifically at getting operators and new recruits. And this is not just operator, I believe it's also going to be for mechanics as well. And she outlined her program, and she shared with the digital and news media advertising campaign $400,000. So obviously, correspondingly here in this column, you'll see $400,000 increase in communications and marketing expenses. The offset that we're going to be utilizing, as Carrie had briefed you, the federal COVID relief funds in that same amount. So that was an increase of $400,000. In addition, we had just talked about in the financial update, and Tim Barham has talked about it, and there were some good questions about the metrics and the goals. So one of the things that has been hindering our on-time performance and is availability of staff, and then with COVID there's been absenteeism and so forth. So what Cheryl, Julie, myself, and Adrian have been talking as a collective management team is, there's a couple initiatives to try to address some of the issues in coordination with the advertising campaign to get folks in the door. Carrie also highlighted that our collective bargaining unit entry level wages at 65% of top wage are less than what I believe the City of Richmond Public Schools and Chesterfield Public Schools and VCU are paying there. So we're looking at basically starting the operators, or proposing starting the operators at the 75% level, which would make them more competitive with the other folks who are trying to grab the precious resources of CDL drivers out there to come work for their organization. And then in addition, I believe that there's about 188 of our operators are at the top wage rate. So the question is, we have some significant items that we want to focus on time performance, and safe operations, reduction of accidents, and so forth. So we're putting together what we'll call a top operator wage rate, variable incentive program, which would have criteria aimed at paying them a monthly bonus, and potentially if they earn several months, or I think it's 10 of the 12 months, they would be eligible for an annual, as an effort to help. And the criteria would be performance goals, their absences, lack of preventable accidents, and any verifiable rudeness customer complaints against them. So we're putting this program together. We feel that it's around $900,000 is probably the estimate for the top operator VIP, and the entry level compression probably about $100,000 in total, $1 million. So as you can see, the $1 million is in the operating expenses for operations, and the corresponding use of the federal COVID relief funds in the revenue section for $1 million. We feel that we want to. This is kind of a retention program as well as a combined program to get folks in the door and make GRTC the preferred employer of folks with CDLs in the Richmond area. In addition, as we're working on the collective bargaining side of the scale, we have also are in the process and nearing the completion of a compensation and classification study for the exempted and excluded population. The study is not done. We have to do some additional benchmarking on the market to market for the certain positions. But from the positions and the initial findings that GRTC's classification scales are low at the midpoint and become even further disparate from the market at the upper ends as longer people are in position. So that's counterintuitive to retention as well. So we have an estimate here based upon the consultant of adjustments at probably about $292,000. There's 4 different methodologies. This is kind of a average of throwing out the high and the low and taking the other three middle ones and coming up with that. So we've included in that as an expense in the administrative operating expenses, and the offset of that would be funded from the FDA funds.
Please tell me what exempt and excluded means.
Those are the non-collective bargaining unit folks. Those are our professional staff.
Thank you.
Covered by the collective bargaining unit agreement. The next column over is the impact and finalization of the Virginia DRPT grants on the local share and the CBTA plan and study. Subsequent to the May meeting, we got there was a tremendous interest in the grant program from the Virginia DRPT. So therefore, we did not get everything that we asked for, and accordingly, if we were moving forward, some of these projects would have to have a higher local share because the state was not there. And so what this column reflects, let me jump a few slides forward. In our fiscal 2022, there's a local contributions from the City of Richmond, Henrico, Chesterfield, as well as CBTA. And then there's the local, based upon the grants that we're getting from the state of Virginia, we have our federal share, then we have the state share, and then the balance of local share if we proceed to go forward. So this is the allocated local shares based up, to the contributions that each of the partners are making. In here for CBTA, there's 2 studies. There's the update for the fiscal year 2023 Regional Public Transportation Plan, and then there's another study for it's micro microtransit as well. So those are coming off the gross contributions, leading to the net operating expenses that or operating contributions that we're showing to cover operating expenses in the budget.
So those are the 4% local contributions for capital expenditures and other expenditures, and they are coming out of that total amount that the localities have pledged.
That's correct.
So that total amount is not for operating, simply it's for operating and capital now, right?
That's correct.
I thought Richmond City, at least in the past, had made separate contributions for capital.
There is a $250,000, they call it equipment note, so that is specifically for capital on top of their operating, but the operating is, other than the 250, of the, let me go back to the chart so I get the number right, of the 2.319 million, 250,000 is earmarked specifically for capital, and the balance of that
I see,
is for discretionary for operating or capital at the GRTC's discretion.
So the way I understand this, then the kind of great bonus that the CVTA promised to give to public transit continues to be less of a bonus than we expected. Yes, Julie.
I think that's we are still working through those numbers, and I think over the course of the next year, as we look at resource allocation with our funding partners in CVTA, we should be able to balance some of these out. But until we get through the next year, I would hesitate to make any kind of statement on that side,
Okay.
one way or another.
I didn't expect you to, but I did.
And also, there's a lot of, we're seeing the streams come in, because some of them initiated in July of 2020, some of them started October 2020, and then they were impacted by the pandemic. And so we're trying to see what the real run rate is. They have their forecast as to what they believe, and we're watching it and building a baseline as well. So we're learning month to month with regards to the collections on that.
We are supposed to be picking up an annual increase in the local contributions. It seems to me was 1.5% in the federal law. Is that correct?
That begins in FY23, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And okay, so you can see the impacts of in that column of the adjustments related to the finalization of the grants and the utilization of the CVTA money and so forth. The next column over is the grant funded IT and personnel adjustments. What we had done is, in the past, there were certain operating expenses that were funded by the state grants, and we kind of just showed them as one-sided. So what we did here is we wanted to break it out separately to get to the right number, and you see a deficit here, or a negative number in the operating expense reimbursement grants. There's grants that cover IT as well as some personnel. There are various grants. So we wanted to show that separately, and because one of the grants was not being covered by the state of Virginia, the original number was higher than what it's ended up going to be. So that's kind of that adjustment to walk us over and true it up. And then the last column is just as we went through and took another look at the manning levels and looked at the cost of benefit assumptions in there for the medical and so forth. We just kind of balanced everything out and trued it up, moved a couple headcount around, added 1 or 2 more positions in there. So what I can share, jump to the last is, this budget is contemplating a total of 491 positions, of which 453 of them are current existing staff. 326 of those 491 are collective bargaining staff. 53 are part-time, and the remaining 112 are professional salaried staff, which I call exempt and excluded. And you can see the 38 vacancies, which about 7.75% of our workforce are vacant. You can see the breakdown on the right. Collective bargaining unit staff are looking for 17 folks. There are 12 of those operators, 3 mechanics, and 2 general utility mechanics. So in essence, 5 maintenance and 12 operators, as well as 8 part-time operators, 1 part-time operator supervisor, and some part-time support in the procurement department, and then from an additional 11 vacancies for salaried staff, 2 in the operations, which would be supervisors. Maintenance would be a supervisor. Facilities maintenance would be an exempt position, and then some additional support in finance, scheduling, safety, and the executive office.
So that's not the full number of vacancies that we list in our planning, but it is what we expect we'll be able to fill in this coming year.
The assumption is that with the programs that we're putting in place in those first couple columns, the raising up the entry level rate, what hopefully will enable us to fill the collective bargaining unit staff, as well as retain what we have, so we have less attrition, so we don't bring in 3 and lose 2. So our assumption is that we will be successful in these programs with both the compression of the entry rate as well as the variable incentive pay for the upper retention, and that we'll be able to fill these positions. This vacancies are as we there are vacancies. They're vacant now. Some of them are budgeted in fiscal 21, but then there's a couple additions that we put in.
Mr. Chairman, if I might also add to that, we know that in FY23 there will be an expectation that we will start adding service based on the CVTA funds coming in. This does not account for that. If we are successful, as we hope to be, in filling the operator positions sooner rather than later, we would come back with a budget amendment or a request for an adjustment to start staffing up in preparation for FY23. But our first goal is to satisfy our current needs.
Excellent, thank you. Any other comments or questions on this? Because I think we're going to move to approve the proposed budget. So let's, how about a motion, and then we'll have any discussion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, it's moved and seconded that we approve the budget for fiscal 22. So let's discuss. Any questions on this? Excellent presentation, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my only comment is that I think we're better informed on the budget than we have been in forever, as far as I can tell. So I'm very thankful to John, and really appreciate, where we sit with understanding the budget and our ability to plan for future budgets.
Along with the CBTA and things like that. It is, I echo what you're saying, Gary.
Same here. I really appreciate the detail on changes that you've shown us here. All right, Julie, you want to say anything more about this before we pass it?
I just wanted to remind the board that this is just the operation portion of the budget, and there's also a capital plan that Keisha will be printing as well. If you wanted to do those 2 separate motions, or if you want to combine them, it's at your pleasure.
Well, I've got a motion, so let's pass this. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the operating budget as presented for fiscal 22. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? It's passed. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Zinzarella. And now, I think,
Chairman?
Yeah.
Chairman, I'm sorry. I tried to jump in before the motion was over.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, just a couple of editorial comments. One, in terms of, just what budgets are. And, budgets, they really tell the values of an organization, more so than anything else. You can look at all of the organic documents and vision statements and all those things, and they really mean what you want to know what an organization really thinks and believes. Look at its budget. And I'm very proud that, this budget, I feel, captures, what GRTC is about in terms of, making sure that we are providing transportation, and the fact that we are anticipating zero fare again shows that we know the importance of, this to our riders. And so I'm just very proud to now have voted to approve this budget because I like the values that it represents.
Thank you.
Okay, soapbox removed. Back on you.
Eldridge, you got something you want to say?
Now, I'd like to ask John, how is the audit going? Is it complete, still working on it, or what? External audit.
We're for the financial audit, they started doing the walkthroughs of the processes. They were here on site yesterday. We're also in the process of working with the external auditor for the defined benefit pension plan audit as well. So they're both ongoing. We had discussions on the financial audit to bringing it to completion prior to the submission of the NTD. So we have plans to elevate the process.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Zinzarella. And I agree. I mean, this is the kind of attention to the need of the board to be effective that we've longed for. And it also obviously reflects an integrity and intentionality in the management that makes a big difference. So thank you, sir. All right, who's next here? This is Keisha, Ms. Reed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Share my screen. Okay. During the May board meeting, we brought before the board our proposed capital spend plan for FY22 at $27 million. Our intent is to utilize federal funds rolled over from previous years, state matching funds, local funds from our jurisdictions, and CVTA funds. No changes have been made to the plan since the May presentation. We will continue to look for ways to lessen the financial burden on our local partners by applying for discretionary federal grant funds and financial support from our private partners. We are asking the board to approve this capital plan as it stands. Are there any comments?
Comments or questions? Somebody saying something? Hello?
I think it's background noise, sir.
Okay. And I see on this thing, most of the stuff we went over earlier with Tanya too, right? That long list of
Yes.
Studies, yeah. All right, well, this is a very exciting and encouraging piece of work. Are we still studying the park and ride for the West End?
The Willow Lawn Park and Ride
Yeah,
is still being done. Actually, I have to double check my schedule. I believe either today or tomorrow I even have an internal review of possible designs, but I could be wrong on that. But
Okay.
absolutely, that is moving forward. And I know that Enrico is very anxious as well to see that done and have been partnering very closely with staff to get that moving forward.
Yeah, okay. All righty, could I have a motion to approve this capital budget for fiscal 22, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that that the capital budget for fiscal 22 that we have been presented be approved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Reed. Here we are. Excellent work.
Thank
you. All right, I think we're at the CEO's report. Julie, it's 9:50. You're on mute.
Okay, there we go. I was just saying, am I muted? I am muted. I will try to keep this short because the goal was to try and get out of here by 10:30, but if we can do it by 10, that'd be awesome. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the CEO report for the month of June, to keep it very short and sweet, the COVID activities, we do understand that the state of emergency for COVID in the state of Virginia is expected to sunset on June 30th. At that time, DOLE, the Department of Labor and Industry, will have 14 days to review the workplace rules around the policies, the COVID policies that we're expected to comply with. And from what I understand, there is a belief that a lot of those rules will likely be rescinded as far as some of the contact tracing that's currently voluntary, some of the additional reporting requirements around COVID and contact tracing. And so this will become a more, unfortunately, part of our new normal, that this we'll have our cleaning, we'll have our sanitation, we'll have our practices around, but we will start removing some of the COVID barriers to transportation that we've experienced for the past year and a half. What that means is that we expect by August 5th is our kind of our date here, that for riders, we'll continue to have zero fare for the entire year, but we will transfer over to dual door boarding. So before, where they had to primarily use the rear door with zero fares, they will be able to use both the front and the back doors without that barrier to the front of the bus. That will open up our buses so that there isn't so much crowding in the back, and people can spread out throughout the entire bus. All trips will be allowed. We won't have the essential trip designation anymore. We will continue the permanent policy against loop riding or joy riding, where anyone gets to be on the bus would stay on the bus for multiple trips with zero fare. The policy has been that you have a one-way trip and then you must debark. So that means at the most one round trip on that bus to get from where you board to where you alight, and then you must get off that bus. And if you need to ride, you would go to your destination and then get on another bus at that time. The mask requirement will stay in effect until September 13th, based on federal rules. Unless those change prior to that point, masks on buses will be required until September 13th. Now, for employees, that means, of course, our operators will have to change how they allow people on and off the buses, so that they'll have to change that a little bit. But the contact tracing we've been doing and the quarantine policies around contact tracing, those will also end by August 15th. The supplemental employer paid sick leave, quarantine leave, and vaccination leave that we have been having since March of last year, those will also begin to phase out. They were non-mandatory at the beginning of the year. They've been voluntary. We've been supporting our staff through it. But as we see higher levels of vaccination, we will start removing those supplemental sick leaves, and people will start having to use their normal accrued sick leave. COVID will become the new flu, the new cold, the new community virus that we will all try to manage and mitigate. I know I, for one, will still be wearing my mask publicly in many situations. I will likely do so around my nieces and nephews forever. I have absolutely enjoyed that I haven't picked up a single cold in the last year from the kids, and I would like to keep it that way. So there are some advantages to the masks. As far as the vaccines in the vaccine clinic, Tim already reported that we will have the vaccine clinic here on July 1 and July 22nd, and we're very excited about that. With over 50% of staff having been vaccinated, I do see that people can go to their CVS's, their Walmarts, their Walgreens to get the vaccine. So when we do our flu clinic next year, I'm hoping that we will also see a dual clinic for both flu and COVID, so we can maintain our vaccinations throughout the upcoming fall season. The June service change was delayed until September. Our collective bargaining agreement that we just ended and agreed with the union had a lot of benefits for our riders that was enacted. Unfortunately, when our new schedule was developed, our team missed the mark. Part of that was a misinterpretation of it. We had promised in the collective bargaining agreement that every route would have one early straight run. With the scheduling, some of that meant that we had to do some interlining of routes, and that added some complexity and some burden to our operators. In order to fix that, we worked very, very closely with the union and staff, and while there was some debate internally with operators and with staff about whether or not to just allow the run to go into June and fix it in September, or just stay as we are and fix it in September, the decision was that there were too many errors that we really needed to fix. So while it was operators' feelings and staff feelings are mixed, I think overall it's a good decision. that we're staying with the schedule we have right now, and then in September we'll come out with a new schedule that has all the different elements of the collective bargaining agreement that we did promise would be in there. You already heard about the CVTA governance report. We're working very closely with CVTA and the consultant on that report. I provided comments and Adrian provided comments on it. We understand that there's a lot of depth that is missing from that report in order for them to make truly good recommendations. And in the meantime, I'm going to be partnering, as I have been for the past couple of months, with our regional partners and our local jurisdictions to talk about what kind of service they expect or desire or need from GRTC, and what kind of participation on the board would make them feel like they have participation in the governance process. So we will continue on those processes over the next several months. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it is before 10 o'clock, so if there are no questions, that will conclude the CEO report for June.
Well, thank you. As I said, I'll be calling you and hopefully talk to you and Adrian about where we are. Then I will contact other board members and discuss with you anything we might have to say vis-a-vis this governance issue as it goes forward. Mr. Gore, thank you very much for showing up to this. I'm glad we didn't have anything to trouble you with. Are there any further comments? Are there any further comments from board members?
Good meeting.
Yeah, good meeting. Thank you to all the staff. Yeah. Danny, do you have something?
I was just saying it was a good meeting, but not that it had been good prior to today, but anyway.
Okay. Eldridge, George, don't forget, if you're going to try to get on the board again, you need to send in your thing to the city. Okay. That's all I have. I'm grateful for the work here, and this is a very tight and competent piece of work today. Thank you all so much for this.
Thank you.
If there's no further business, we will adjourn this meeting at 9:58 and 59 seconds. Bye.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.